Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke, and today it is now the 6th of June, and it's a rather overcast day again here today. We did have rain last night. It's interesting because they put a new road in, and there were certain places where the water would pond on the roads, and when I'm looking out my window, even with the potholes and things all gone now and filled in, the water ponds in the same spots. And good morning, Sam. I have the water tends to pond in the same spot, so that tells me that's probably how those holes got there to begin with. I'm just talking about my new road and the fact that we had all this rain, and now the places on the road where before when we had potholes and stuff, the same places where the potholes were, there tends to be water still pooling there, so it's kind of weird. But good morning. So I have this. Just interesting observation, and I went downstairs to pour my coffee this morning. I usually get my coffee. It's funny, I have a regular coffee pot, I have a French press, and then I have a Keurig that was given to me that I have up in my room. And so I alternate between them because I don't really like to use Keurig that much. It's not very environmentally friendly, but I do use them sometimes. But this morning anyway, I'm using the regular coffee pot, and I went downstairs and there's this deer staring right into my back kitchen window. I was like, oh, good morning. So it was kind of funny. I've taken fencing out in the back of my yard that was not in good shape. So, which is actually kind of good because then I have nowhere to put leaves in the autumn. So now I can just blow everything back into the woods. But now the deer and the other animals come up into my yard, which they never have really before. So it's kind of interesting. So anyway, this morning I have, yesterday, I'm trying to remember if I posted yesterday's live stream to YouTube. I woke up this morning thinking, well, I was just setting up now and I thought, did I actually post? Yesterday's was pretty good, and I was like, did I actually post it? But I have to go back and look. I had so much going on yesterday. I'm selling one of my books, my academic book that I wrote. That again, I connect more with Ketonia and the Ketonia podcast that I do, but it's called Death and the Maiden: The Curious Relationship Between the Fear of the Feminine and the Fear of Death. And it's actually a reworking of my doctoral dissertation. Not a huge reworking. It's mainly just some stuff has really been added in, afterwards that I thought, oh, this really belonged in here. And whether it's as good as the other material, I'm not sure. But in any case, in terms of the fact that piece of it wasn't necessarily peer reviewed in the way that the other was. So, good morning. It's been a long couple of days. Feels like a timeline jump. Yeah, it is. And it's funny because this morning I was doing my meditation, and my meditation is. There's elements of it that are timed. You do things for a certain amount of time. And for some reason, I feel like I'm doing things the same amount of time, but at the end of it, somehow more time has passed. It's just weird. And the whole day has just been, yesterday was crazy. Because anyway, I put my book up. I had 15 author copies, and I said, okay, it's 15 for 15. But it was USA only, and I do have at least one friend from the UK who ordered it. And I'm like, it's going to cost an additional $25 to ship that to you, which is why I had said USA only, but yeah, they missed that part. It's fine. I mean, I totally appreciated this person supporting me. I said, you might want me to cancel that, and if you want a copy, just get it on Amazon. Somebody from Canada too, who had asked for a copy, and I said, well, it costs $25 to $30 to ship it. Which is, if I'm selling, the book I'm actually selling for half price, but it's like, well, if I ship it, then you're actually paying more than if you had just ordered it through Amazon. The only difference being that I was signing these copies, and I guess if somebody really wanted copies signed by me, then okay. But it's probably, I don't know that my signature is worth that additional $30, but maybe it is to somebody, who knows. So, anyway, I've got one of those things, but yeah, all of a sudden I'm waking up and I have all these orders and I have to run to the post office, and I'm trying to put these classes together, and I do have another fellow healer who I work with, Jenny, is coming over today in the morning. She's had a rough couple of days, so I was like, yeah, why don't you pop by, and we can do, like, I'll do some Reiki therapy, and then she does it as well. So she says, well, we'll do a Reiki swap. How's that? I said, okay. So we'll get that later this morning, which will be nice. But last night, so I've been a little chaotic. So if I have been saying, oh, I'm going to do this, and then I've gotten delayed, forgive me. I've just been trying to keep track of everything, because a lot of things just kind of coming down at the same time. And yeah, time does feel like it's really flying these days. So the thing I was going to talk about this morning, I ended up having a dream last night, and I think I had mentioned that this was probably back at the beginning of May. Yeah, because I was doing these morning coffees things, starting from about May 2nd, I think. And this was like a week after that. It was around the 9th of May. I had that dream that I had talked about with Ola and Nola, okay, where I was sitting on a bus with a woman, and she was a blonde woman. She was very Eastern European, but she said her name was, I kept thinking her name was Nola. She said, no, my name is Ola, O-L-L-A. And which I found out is like a feminine form of Olaf, which is actually, I think, more of, obviously more of a Norse name, but she was going by that. And Ola appeared in last night's dream. Okay, that's why I mentioned her. And also, there's an old woman who appears in my dream, and she appeared in this dream as well. But it was weird. It was like I was in Russia, and there was like a group of us who worked. I don't even know what place it was we worked at. It was night, and it was dark. And I've noticed a lot of my dreams, it's dark and rainy when I'm in a car or when I'm driving, which is interesting. And so we were all sitting. It was like we were sitting in these taxis, like they were just around. And people were sitting there like taking, like, presumably what was their break, like their lunch break or dinner break or whatever type of break it was. And I wasn't the only person doing this, but it was mostly men around me. There were men, and they were sitting, and there was more than one, taxi. It was like other people and other ones. It was me, and it seemed like there were two other people in there with me, two men, and I don't know who they were. But the car was a British car because the steering wheel was on the right rather than on the left. And I could only see the top of the head of the woman driving, and she had like white kind of frizzy, but it was almost like it was up in a bun. And then it was like at some point, all of a sudden the car just started to move. And when it did, we were actually on a road that had been the road away from my very first job, which was at a library in New Jersey, okay, that I used to work at. It was the county library in Morris County. I worked there for, oh my gosh, collectively probably over 20 years. But I had worked there for a very long time. I started there in the 80s. I left, and then I came back again for a few years, from like year 2000, 2001 to 2005 or something. I had gone back again to did a much different job. But it was so somehow we were there, and I had to tell this woman, no, we can't, we weren't actually going on this road. We were, people were just taking breaks, and this is not the direction we actually want to go. And then it was like she was sitting in the back seat with me, and now it wasn't this woman, Ola, and she says to me, but this is the meter has started, like this is the direction we're going now. And so I said, look, I will pay you and tip you to just take us back to where we were, because we do need to get back to where we were. And then the men in the car started handing me money to pay their portion to go back. And so she did turn around and take us back. And I remember it was like somehow I had tons of money in my hand. Like people were handing me all these 20s and things. And of course, this is not Russia, obviously. This is the U.S. And I'm like, I have all this money now. And so I went to her and I said, well, how much do I owe you? And she just kind of smiled. She says, no. She says, really, you don't really owe me anything. And she went away again. And so I woke up and I just thought it was curious, because I don't often have dreams where we have, especially if it's somebody I don't know. Like, we can have dreams about members of our family, and we can have dreams about, but when I see a repeat character from the same dream and it's not somebody I actually know, whoa, the symbolism in your dream and the stuff you're dealing with, wow. Yeah. It's fascinating, right? And there's probably even more to it than you would think. But there's a lot there about payment and repayment, and and the pathway that I'm being taken on, that it's like that's not the pathway I need to go. And sort of, there's a lot of breaking karma stuff in this dream. This is the way, that's what came to me when I woke up with this one. So it's crazy stuff, and I pulled dream cards on it, and it was interesting because I wanted to share it today, because it definitely is a theme. Again, a lot of these themes, I'm talking about the way it's happening to me, but as we were talking about field theory and how things are related, this is also things that are happening to other people. I've gotten, phone calls from people, messages from people, different things that where literally it just feels like everybody's going through some version of this. And so the first card I had pulled was this card, actually. And this card is called Suffering. Okay, so And this is an ego card, and it basically says, suffering is resistance to the life force. What wants to come through is thwarted by our choices and attitudes. The best cure for suffering is to allow its intense energy to crack open resistances to reality. Resisting pain makes it worse. Use pain to teach you lessons pleasure never could. Let go to the energy of challenge, stay present, process, and let tension purge you, causing breakthroughs to new life and new consciousness. Okay? And it's right. So, and I have a few metaphors that came in my head for that. But anyway, I will kind of move on to that. Transformation is the second card. Okay, this is kind of the meat of the thing, and it says transformation is the first true death that makes a second birth possible. This is the card of the Rainbow Warrior. Okay, and it says. The Rainbow Warrior gives up the old life. How willing are you to let go of the old and totally transform? Anyone who has gone through rebirth, either self-initiated or totally demanded, knows their life is no longer their own. They live now for essence and not for the fixed values of the past. They let themselves undergo daily deaths, giving up egocentricities and ego desires to continually be reborn into greater purpose. Now, my only thing about that is I'm not necessarily a person, I've said this, that I don't necessarily think life has a purpose per se. But there is something about it that is, nonetheless, I feel like the choices we make, we end up on certain pathways because we're so connected to everything else that we're part of this larger system, whatever it is and whatever it means. And when we make a choice, not to pretend that we're not part of that system, I guess, then it's almost like it's a whole new way of living. And that's definitely something I've been struggling with this month because obviously, financially things have been different for me. When I first left my job, there was a certain amount of financial backing that I had. So it was kind of like, all right, well, you know what? It doesn't matter. I can take my time with things. Now I feel like it's almost like I keep getting this thing like, okay, you need to lean into this. Like this is what your life is now. You need to lean into this. And you can't sit there and say, oh, but it was so much nicer when I made, $100,000 a year or whatever doing this other job that I hated and sucked the life out of me. So, but also, that woman, when she keeps appearing and reappearing in the dream, she seems to have be connected to the ancestry, particularly on my mother's side, because that side is kind of Polish Russian side of things, and that's what I feel like she is. Not that she's a stand-in for my mother, but she's a stand-in for that family and what that family has, what that aspect of my DNA or my life, and it's kind of like I'm almost like paying them off, like no. That's not the way that you were doing it is not the way to do it anymore. And that is something that's rather common. I don't know if anybody here is of an Eastern European background. And I know, by the way, it's not exclusively Eastern European. Okay, I know of other cultures that have this kind of mindset as well. But when Joanna Madlock and Joanna was, she and I have done a couple episodes of Katonia podcast together. She's also another lecturer, and she's a native of Poland. And so when I talk to her about some of the stuff going on with my mom and stuff, she'll be like, your mother's Polish, isn't she? And it's funny. I said, yeah, she is. And I mean, my mother wasn't born in Poland. But her parents were born in Poland. They emigrated. So she's first generation in this country. And she doesn't speak Polish or anything, because she came from a family that when they came from the old country, it was like they didn't want to talk about the old country at all. They just wanted to be Americans. And that was actually a thing that happened a lot. I don't know if it was because of persecution of immigrants at that time, which, somehow there's always a xenophobia around immigration, unfortunately. Or if it was just that it seems to me like whatever went on in the old country was so awful that I'm fully Mediterranean, but Marina, and Vasilisa seem to sort of loom around. Yeah, right, and that, and then of course like the Baba Yaga stuff and everything as well. Yeah, Morana. Oh yes, okay, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, and that's just it. Is it? You're fully Mediterranean, so it's kind of like, but the question then becomes, where does that come from when we start connecting in with these mythologies and these things, like especially the Slavic myths that are not necessarily part of that? There is some discussion as to whether or not those there's probably a Mediterranean origin for a lot of them. A lot of Slavic mythology seems to connect in with Roman mythology in particular. So that might not be as far-fetched as it seems. I mean, at least if we're looking at it from an ancestral standpoint, there may be other reasons. We never know quite the reasons why we get called to certain things, right? Like why are we feeling drawn to certain deities or certain systems or certain things? But it's so interesting with this because I just feel like but Joanna had said to me, she had said, because she talks about the values that her family tends to have. And that value is you are working all the time. Like if she's at home and like she takes, she works every day because she does quite a few different things. She's a photographer, she's a lecturer, she says all this stuff. And if she takes a day and says, okay, I'm going to order a pizza tonight, I'm not going to cook or something like that, then her mother would be kind of like, oh, yeah, there you are being lazy, not cooking for your husband. Like, there's kind of this thing of like, and my mother is very much like this. My mother's in a very frail condition. And when she broke her pelvis and her hip recently, my sister and I just, more work. Trying to keep her out of the basement, lifting buckets of water to empty her dehumidifier, I can say that, upstairs. And we're like, you've broke, and then she'll be like, oh, I don't feel very good. I'm like, stop doing this. Like I was actually taking Thursdays off to go to her house with my sister so that we could do her laundry and that we could do her dishes and that we could carry things for her because she had been in the hospital twice. Not to very good end because they're useless, unfortunately. The best hospital in the Northeast, and they were totally useless. But her specialist looked at the x-rays that for some reason their radiology department didn't bother to look at, probably because she was older, and they were just like, yeah, broken 2 fractures in 2 places. And she's already got osteoporosis, osteopenia, degenerative scoliosis. Like she's like literally, she and I used to be the same height. I'm about 5'4", and my mom is now down here. She's like 4'9". She's completely shrunk. She's also a very frail woman. Like if you looked at my constitution next to her, I mean, you wouldn't even understand body type wise why we're related. It's just weird. She's a very, very frail person, and but she has to. No, I have to go out and sweep every thing that falls from the tree off my driveway every single day. There's a mentality about I have to keep doing. Otherwise somehow I'm a bad and a person who's lazy and shiftless and not doing what they're supposed to do. And so a lot of times we busy ourselves. Like it used to drive us nuts. She would leave my father when he was ill in the house so she could go out and dig crabgrass out of the lawn because somehow she didn't like the way it looked with the other glass. She ended up destroying her lawn that way. My sister and brother-in-law went over and did some stuff to fix it, and they said, no, stay away from it, stop touching it. But like that was her thing. She was always, everything had to. She would come to my house if it, I clean my house every week, pretty things, but there's a little thing up there. There's one little speck. Like, or if my sister painted her ceiling and there was like one spot, we have to go back and do the whole thing again because you didn't get that one spot. That's the way my mother is. She's almost very compulsive in that way. So there's a whole lot there around, and I don't think this is by any means unique to me. I think people, especially people like in the U.S. who have immigrant families who come in, because then they're the very thing, and that was the U.S. kind of thing. If you work hard, you'll be prosperous and you'll be rewarded. So the fact that I left my job and did something that is completely off the beaten track. My mother, she doesn't say it to me, but she only says it to my sister. I don't understand how she can live without a 9-to-5 job. I don't understand how she can do this. I don't understand. Like, and it's constant. And she's constantly like, oh, I think, constantly about how I'm definitely going to fail because I don't have a 9-to-5 job. And it's like, I have to be like, look, I'm not following this script. It has done nothing but tie you up in knots your whole life and never allow you to enjoy anything. Because I always say to her, look, your retirement money shouldn't be spent like bailing out your kids or doing this or doing that. It should be spent for you and dad, if for your health care at the very least, but also just, if you want to travel, you want to see your grandchildren, you want to do things like this is for you. And she would get very annoyed with me. Like, that's not right. That's not what I should be doing. I have to, she's always looking for the people who she feels she needs to fix. And I'm like, but that comes out of trauma, that comes out of a trauma that she's lived. So this is what I think this dream refers back to in a lot of ways. This kind of thing. And sorry, I don't mean to make this about me, but it's just, but you know what I mean? It is a trauma that I hear from a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, that there's this impulse almost like if I'm not, and certainly if it doesn't even come from our ancestral background, it comes from a cultural norm that says, like in the US, like where you have to work 80 hours a week, to be successful. There's definitely a mindset there. So when you just say, now the kind of work that I do, I still have to work very, very hard. That's been kind of the message. Like the analogy that I had for it, there was two analogies that I had. One was the fact that, I think about people, and this may not be the best example if we think about what happens to like indigenous cultures in the US and stuff like that, which was completely like a travesty. But if you want to take the idea of somebody who, like the people in the late 1800s who were going to take the wagon trains and go out west, go towards California, go towards the Rocky Mountains, go towards that way, out of the cities of the East. So if you just want to take it just symbolic of this whole pioneering experience. So these people might have lived in nice houses in the city or whatever, and then they go out. And what are they doing? They're building houses, right? They have to cut down trees, and they're building log cabins, and wherever they're settling, they have to go and build the homestead, and they have to tend the homestead. And if this was not the kind of life that they lived before, then you start to miss that. You start to say, oh, well, back in the city, I had this and I had that, and I didn't have to do this. But if you're going to build your own structure, okay, if you're going to blaze your own trail, and the last card here was the choosing card, okay, and this was the image that went with it. It says, choice is when we put energy in one direction and not another. When we say yes to one thing and no to that would oppose it. What we choose is what we become. We should be known far more by our choices than by what we say. Am I using choice-making power for myself or for a greater purpose, as they say? Or I'm going to just say for the collective. Am I using choice-making to break my compulsions to free life energy? What is the one choice I make in each every day? I can choose wholeness. Only the choosing are chosen. So so there's the idea, the way I read this is, there has been a lot of suffering. And again, I'm talking about myself, but I'm also talking about other people around me as well. But it's people who have usually been typically on some kind of a spiritual path, or people who are trying to break away at the very least to do something that is more authentic to them, where they're trying to break past patterns, where they're trying to say, okay, the old way is not healthy for me, it's not working for me, and they're trying to transform into this new way. And part of that process, a lot of times, sometimes, because as I think I had said in another one, I think another live stream, sometimes people will experience that suffering and that block, and they'll say, well, see, that just means I'm wrong and I shouldn't be doing this. And it's like, no, I don't think it's saying that at all. I think it's telling you there's work involved, and if you lean into that to some degree, which we never like, we want something that's going to take pain away. But sometimes when you lean into it, it's almost like it has that element that I see of the fire card, where it's like with fire, you are, you're burning up old stuff at the same time that fire is often also, when we talk about lighting a fire under something, it's like the light bulb. It's like an inspiration that comes in. So sometimes when we're in that point of necessity, that's when we really suddenly hustle and say, okay, I can't just sit around and say, I'll get to it tomorrow. It's the fire that gets lit. It's like, okay, now you need to focus your energy on solving this puzzle or solving this problem. And it's not saying, well, the path isn't easy, so therefore it's wrong. You know what I mean? Again, it doesn't necessarily mean that one always has to be, one has to always be working hard. But the thing is, if you are working at the things that are authentic to you, then the work is something that you enjoy doing. You enjoy the process of moving towards that thing which is authentic to you, because you think about it, if somebody asks you a question about something, or about a person you care about in your life, or about something, the way that your face will change when you talk about that person or when you talk about that situation. There's something, people can automatically sense a difference that you're in it. You're in it and you're feeling it, right? If you, when you're just doing it because, well, this is the thing I ought to do, you can generally tell, because people are just like, yeah, I gotta do more of this and I'll get through that. And, when your energy is in it, and it's kind of like, yeah, this is why, because I think the conundrum a number of people have been faced with is, do I go back and get, I heard it the other day, somebody, do I go back and get a regular job? Maybe I should, maybe this is too hard. Maybe I should give up on this and just go back to where I was. And it's like, You know, well, I mean, that's a choice you can make. I mean, nobody's saying that you can't if you do feel it's too much. But is it better than to just say, no, now this is the time for me to really creatively lean into what it is that I'm doing and to figure things out? And of course, the universe, I always find, does provide. Like beginning of the month, I was kind of like, okay, I'm not sure where I'm going to be at the end of the month. Here I am by mid-month, and things are still kind of close, but things are looking a lot better than they did at the beginning of the month because a lot of unexpected stuff came in that I didn't know. Like I said, you know, there's the books I'm selling from home, but then there's also other books that I published this month. Those are starting to sell, and then I'm getting appointments in that I didn't expect. That's, you know, that's things. And then I'm getting other projects in, and that money's coming in. So I'm like, okay, here it is. It's coming together, and at some point it will come together in a much bigger way. But for right now, it's like, you know, don't catastrophize, right? Good morning, Melissa. So interesting stuff coming up today around transformation. The other analogy, I said that there were two analogies. The first one was the pioneering analogy. When you go out and you pioneer in somewhere, then that's when you've got to literally break new ground. Okay, you're not just moving into some structure that's already there, and you're not necessarily going to have the conveniences and amenities of what's already there. The second one we were talking about, there's a very funny thing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Mystery Science Theater 3000. It was a very funny TV show. I think it was originally on, it was a channel called, I think it was a comedy channel called Ha, years ago, before Comedy Central. And then I think it was moved to the Sci-Fi Channel. Because I think a lot of the movies that they covered were it was supposed to be something taking place out in space, so I think that's why they moved it to the Sci-Fi Channel. But there were two different hosts. It was Joel and then there was Mike. And they have these robots with them. And basically, the plot is weird. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. I think the plot's just kind of weird. It definitely is not the kind of thing that would like appeal to me. But the idea is that these guys are all been launched out. Like this guy with these robots are launched into the satellite in space, and they all are like kind of forced to watch bad movies. And which I know that sounds really weird. But when they sit down in the theater and watch the movies, and then they comment on the movies, that's the gold right there, because it's so funny. So there was this one movie that they did called The Creeping Terror. I think they did this in their first season. And it was this movie that was made like in the early 60s, I guess. And it was black and white. And it was one of those ones that used to be that the sound wasn't recorded on the medium. You had to, you would have a separate tape, like a reel-to-reel tape with the sound from the movie. And apparently for this movie, what I'd read about it was that somebody dropped the sound thing in like a lake somewhere, like oops. So they had to recreate it. So they had like a narrator for certain parts, and then when the dialogue had to be redone, it was like they dubbed it over the old one, but it was kind of out of sync. So anyway, it's hilariously awful, and it's like it's supposed to be about this monster that comes and devours, but the monster's hilarious too. I mean, it literally looks like somebody's like quilting project or something. It's just really it's hilariously funny. But there's this one scene where there's the woman, again wearing this dressing gown that's really weird looking, but she had the kind of 60s like bouffant hair, and she's waving goodbye to her husband, and then she's got her baby in the house, okay? And so she goes in, and the baby is crying, and she kind of looks down on him and smiles, and then she's like, oh, poor baby, you'll feel better soon. And the guys in the audience are like, well, how about like picking him up or feeding him, and they're going like, well, my love deprivation experiment's working, and then, but then what's funny is she kind of takes the baby's temperature, and then she says, yeah, poor baby, you'll feel better soon. And then they're going, well, that's it. That's done. Now I have the whole day to myself. And that's the piece that's making me laugh. Because yeah, think about that. Oh, I went in. Oh, baby's crying. I did this. Okay, well, I'm done. Okay, well, now I'm done with baby for the day, so now I can go out and do something else. And it's hilarious because, of course, you don't do that. When you have a child, you have to take care of it constantly. You have to feed it. You have to look after it. It's not like, okay, I did this once and then we're done. And I think a lot of people do that with business. Like, okay, I put one thing up on social media, so now I'm done. I don't have to do anything else now. And it's like, well, no, you have to keep at it. You have to keep you have to put yourself out there. You have to let people know that you're there. You don't necessarily have to walk around putting leaflets everywhere and go, pounding the pavement and going into buildings. That's not everybody's thing. Or you don't have to always cold call people or stuff like that. I hate when people cold call me, so I will never do it to them. But nonetheless, there are other ways that you need to get yourself out there, and you need to be doing, unfortunately, that's just part of it. If you're marketing something to somebody, then you have to do that, but you do it in whatever way works for you, whatever way. And if you're passionate about what you're doing, then that will transfer. That will transfer, and people will know and will see who you are and what you have to offer. So, there's not just one way to do that either. But it's like, but it's the idea is that it's like a baby that you have. And you have to care for that baby. You can't just, I've had it, and now I can just leave it over here. You have to do something with it. And I think that's been part of the message as well. So we're at 7 o'clock, and I haven't started my reading. So, that was just a very funny thing. I think I recommended that episode to somebody. We were talking about it, something related yesterday, and I said, oh, you got to go see this. It's just, it's just classically funny. But that was the idea, that we, when we've committed to a new path, we have to commit to it, So let's just see. So this is a reading. This is not for me personally. This is for people viewing this live stream, live and maybe afterwards as well. So what do we have for today? Okay. Okay. Yeah, interesting. Our first card is one of my favorite ones in this one, the Patience card. And didn't I just say about babies, right? And then, so we get the card of the pregnant woman and the moon cycles, right? And this is the Seven of Pentacles, which, again, depending on which deck you look at, depending on which deck a lot of times people, some interpretations of the Seven of Pentacles is, you're reevaluating whether or not you're wasting your time on something. The other side of it is you're watching what you have grow, and you're just waiting for the harvest. This really emphasizes that second way of looking at it, and this, I think this is definitely the more positive attribute of that card, and that is more the way that I see it. It's, you might be going through a period of reevaluation. Maybe there's some course correction, like, okay, I've been doing it this way. I'm not sure this way is working, but I can change it up and I can do it this way. So, there's definitely a sense of evaluation with the Seven of Pentacles. But, I'm sorry, Seven of Pentacles. I thought I had the suit on there for a minute. So what you're doing here is it's basically saying this is something that takes time. And again, it's that whole thing of what you're trying to manifest is manifesting even if you don't see it. It is growing the way it's supposed to, even if you don't see it. So you have to keep tending to it. Again, but planting a seed, you can't just plant the seed and then be like, all right, I'm never going to water it or pay attention to it or do anything after that. I'm just, okay, it's planted and now, sink or swim on your own, it might thrive on its own, but a lot of times, that doesn't happen. If you've done any kind of gardening, that sometimes you have to go back and check and make sure, depending on your weather and stuff too, but evaluating all those factors and the inner feeling of which we're unaware, change. And this is like that. This is transformation. And it's interesting because we also have transformation here. So it's a in point. Yes, right. Yeah, exactly. This is definitely something that is on point here. And so change. This is something that's happening. Okay, and when this card comes up, it's happening. It's happening on a bigger scale. It's about more than you and what you're doing. There's a lot of things shifting in this world. I mean, whether we want to look at it astrologically, with Pluto's going retrograde right now. So, and that's a thing too. With Pluto going retrograde right now, even though it's still technically in Aquarius, it's going to start going back, and it's going back over the ground and figuring out what's been left behind that's still wounded, that's not healed yet. And that's going to be happening until, because I think it's going to go back into Capricorn somewhere around September-ish, and then I think it's going to be there through November, and then it's going to start moving the other way again. And, as this moves, so until Pluto actually does that, I mean, I feel like this is why everybody's kind of going through this period of angst of, oh my gosh, I've followed this path, or I've struck it out on my own, or I made this big life change. Did I make a mistake? Should I go back to where I was before? Should I, what are the choices that I need to make? And if I've made the choice, have I committed to my choice? There's a lot of this that's going on, and I feel like, yeah, and this is something that's happening it's happening in spite of you, basically. It's just the nature of change, and it's a change that you go along with. It's not one that you have the power to really knock, you can resist it, I suppose, but that just creates more of a problem for you rather than going with it. And yeah, the external feeling of which you're aware, again, our turning in card, we got this yesterday. All the external voices that are telling us, we're not doing it, why aren't you doing it the old way? Oh, it'd be so much better if you did this and you did that. And it's just kind of like, you've just got to listen to yourself. You've got to listen to your inner voice. Listen to your guides. You listen, that's who you want to listen to. And again, the problem is, depending, especially people who are more earth sign orientated may want to see more of the results in the external world right away. It's like we want somebody to wave the wand and have the miraculous result appear, and that's not generally how things work. So it's just a matter of saying, no, I know what the right thing is, and I'm going to listen to what I need to do. I'm not going to allow myself to be torn in different directions by these other voices, And then, yeah, we have our transformation card again. The death card. There's definitely this idea that, and interestingly, the middle card that I had when I was talking, those of you who arrived late, I was talking about my dream. The middle card is also transformation. The one where I had said, how willing are you to let go of the old and transform? Anyone who's gone through rebirth, self-initiated or totally demanded, knows that their life is no longer their own. Okay, knows their life is no longer their own. They live for essence and not the fixed values of the past. Okay, yeah, the fixed values of the past are what are being upended right now. So it's the question of how are we meeting this new world? How are we meeting this new space? And I feel like a lot of the changes people are making are really in that direction, whether we're consciously aware we're doing that or not. We're moving towards whatever this new reality is going to be for us, or whatever we're shifting into in terms of the way the world is. And so, yeah, the outcome, we have the Three of Swords. Now, it's interesting. This is the isolation card. So part of this is about, again, to me, this is about focusing on on your support, focusing on your network, and not just on me and what I think I have or don't have. Like what's around you. Another aspect of the Four of Cups, which is not really shown by this card, is that sometimes, usually in the traditional decks, it's a guy sitting with his arms folded, staring at three cups, while another cup is being held out to him, but he's not looking at it. He's only looking at those cups that are over there, and that there's that card of like, that's not good enough, or it's not what I thought it was. Like, in other words, we're allowing ourselves to when we move into something new, we start comparing it to the old. Well, it wasn't like this, or it's not like that person's experience, or it's not like that. It's like, no, where is your support? Where are you in the collective? And Three of Swords may also be about, where do you need to cut? If there are people in situations that are just holding you down and causing you to resist the change that's happening, are those people or relationships that you need to release? That's another piece of it as well. Sometimes Three of Swords comes up when we have a separating path from people as well. So that's coming into my mind, so that maybe that applies for somebody. So that I'm just going to say that. But Three of Swords is, yeah, it's about knowing when separation needs to happen, but also about allowing ourselves to feel, maybe to grieve, maybe what's past or what's lost, or what we've separated from. Because it might not even be a person. It might also just be the situation. It might be like, okay, this was the life I had before. These were all the good things about it. But, now we need to focus on what's good about this new life that I'm embracing. Let's focus on what the opportunities are there. Who's in my network? Who has my back? Who's my tribe? Who supports me? Right? It may or may not be your family. In my case, somebody posted something on Facebook this morning. They said, family ties are the most important no matter what. And I'm like, I just don't agree with that, because sometimes people's families I think a lot of people are breaking family ties. A lot of people have Pluto in the 4th house. I'm doing a lot of charts for people, and Pluto's often in the 4th house. And it's in mine. It's funny. My sister, it's also in her 4th house, and I was like, how do we have this? There's a lot of her things in her chart and my chart that are very, very similar, which is probably why we get on the best. But she was, but this is just it. It's issues around family. It's issues around doing things with family and family. The ways in which family can support us potentially, but the ways in which family can judge us and hold us back too. Oh, you're not doing the thing. For me, I didn't choose to I did get married, but I didn't stay married, and I didn't have a family, and I chose a life that they consider to be maverick kind of lifestyle. So then it becomes like, you're, they're judging you like, oh, well, you're just a weirdo because you didn't do it everybody else's way. And you don't need to accept that. You just need to say, okay, well, these are people who want to follow a certain script, and, it's anybody's right to follow whatever script they want to follow. But that there's nothing wrong with you because you didn't choose to follow it. Okay, everybody know, if you're listening to your inner voice, you know where it is that you're going. And that's kind of your guide star, and ultimately your guide star is you. You know what I mean? It's ultimately you. Even if you have guides, your guides are really a reflection of what. And Ken, I don't always like the term higher self. I don't like hierarchical terms. Okay, I guess that's my thing. But people understand the term higher self. It's whatever your higher self is trying to gear you towards, if we want to use that terminology. So anyway. Lots to think about today, right? And if you arrived late too, I was talking about my dream that I had last night, which was crazy. And it did relate back to a dream I had on May 9th, same character appearing. And she looked the same too, by the way, in this dream. I've seen that, and then there's another old woman character who keeps appearing in my dream. She's actually appeared in 3 or 4 of them. And she might actually be a representation of my mom, even though she doesn't look like my mom. So, interesting stuff lately. Well, anyway, that's my my insight for the day, or my reflection, or sharing, whatever it is, and of course our reading for the day. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Hopefully that resonates with what's going on with you. And again, if you missed any of this, the recording's gonna be there. Thank you so much. Needed this. Fantastic. You're welcome. Like I said, I enjoy getting up and doing this in the morning because it helps you, and sometimes it helps me too. It helps me kind of think, what are you doing here? So it's definitely, I think, a good thing. I hope it's a good thing for everybody. And so have a wonderful rest of your day. I will be back tomorrow morning at this same time. And, in the meantime, you're welcome. And in the meantime, enjoy, and we'll see you next time. Take care.